The night everything fell apart. For 7 long years, she believed every word he said, every promise, every soft whisper in the dark, every "trust me, I'll never hurt you." To her, he wasn't just a man, he was home, the kind of love you wait your whole life for. Or at least that's what she thought. That night started like any other. Quiet, ordinary, almost boring. She was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when his message popped up. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." She smiled, typed back, "Okay, be safe," and put her phone aside. He'd been working late a lot lately. Too much, maybe, but she never questioned him. Because trust, that was their thing, or so she believed. The clock struck midnight. Rain tapped against the window like it was trying to tell her something. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, slow and low, and that's when her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't from him. It was a notification she wasn't supposed to see, a message meant for someone else. The name on the screen froze her blood. A name she didn't recognize, and the words beneath it, they didn't sound like business. They didn't sound innocent. They sounded intimate. She opened it, hands shaking. One sentence, one truth, and in a single heartbeat, her world stopped. Everything she thought she knew, the laughter, the memories, the years, began to crumble like glass. She tried to breathe, but the air felt heavier than ever. Her heart pounded, not from anger yet, but confusion. Who was she? Why was he lying? And most of all, how long had it been going on? That night she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, staring at the message glowing on her screen, as if staring long enough would make it disappear. But it didn't. And in that silence, something inside her shifted. The woman who once trusted blindly started to see clearly. The man she thought she knew began to look like a stranger. And as dawn crept across the sky, she made herself one quiet promise. He won't see it coming. Because sometimes, the deepest heartbreak doesn't break you. It awakens the part of you that refuses to be fooled again. And this time, she wasn't going to be the victim. Not anymore, perfect. We're continuing your cinematic YouTube script for He Lied for Years. Her shocking revenge changed everything. We've completed. Section 1. The Hook. The suspenseful opening scene that ends on her discovery. Now comes Section 2. Setup, where we rewind the story to show how it all began. The love, trust, and small signs she missed. This section builds emotional depth, so when betrayal hits later, the audience feels it. Section 2. Setup. The love that looked perfect before the lies. Before the heartbreak, there was love. The kind that makes you forget the world outside even exists. She met him on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. It was raining then, too. Funny how rain always seemed to mark the turning points in her life. She had dropped her umbrella near the cafe entrance, and before she could reach for it, a hand picked it up. He smiled. That easy, charming kind of smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You should be more careful," he said softly. "The world's full of people who'd steal even an umbrella this nice." She laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was him. Something about his voice, his presence, the quiet confidence he carried. It felt familiar, comfortable, and from that simple moment, their story began. They talked for hours that day, about dreams, books, childhood, silly things that somehow mattered more than anything else. He was attentive, funny, sincere. He remembered her favorite coffee order before she even told him twice. He noticed when she changed her hairstyle, when she looked tired, when she tried to hide her worries. He saw her, or at least she believed he did. Months passed, and their connection only grew deeper. He became her constant, the good morning text, the late night call, the voice that always promised, "I'm not like the others. You can trust me." And she did. They built a life together brick by brick, a small apartment filled with laughter and plans. She found old photos on her phone, the kind that captured love in its purest form, blurry, unposed, real. Every time she looked at them, she thought, this is what happiness looks like. Her friends adored him. Her parents said she was lucky, and every time she caught him staring at her with that soft, unspoken admiration, she agreed. But life has a way of hiding storms behind sunshine. Sometimes what feels perfect is just practice. Practice for the pain that's waiting behind it. There were little things back then. Tiny cracks in the mirror she refused to notice. The unexplained late meetings, the sudden change of passwords, the way he'd turn his phone screen away when a message came in. She told herself it was nothing. Just work, just stress, just her imagination. After all, love is supposed to mean trust. And trust means never asking questions you're afraid to hear the answer to. Still, some nights she'd lie awake beside him, watching him sleep, wondering why the peace on his face didn't match the storm in her heart. Something inside her whispered, "Something's off." But she silenced that voice. Because loving him felt easier than doubting him. And losing him felt unthinkable, so she ignored the signs. She kept smiling. She kept believing, because that's what love does. It blinds you just enough to miss the truth staring right back at you. And the truth was waiting, patiently, quietly, like a shadow creeping closer each day. Soft transition music. The narrator's voice deepens as we shift into tension. That shadow finally took form one night. The night her phone lit up with a message she wasn't meant to see. The moment that shattered the illusion and left her staring at a stranger she once called the love of her life. But before we get there, before her revenge, before the storm, you need to understand what it feels like to love someone who's been lying all along. Because only then can you understand what it means to lose everything and still rise stronger? Conflict. When trust starts to crack. The thing about lies is, they don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes they whisper. They hide in routine smiles, small excuses, and half-finished conversations. And before you even realize it, your peace begins to rot from the inside out. At first, she thought it was her imagination. The little changes in his behavior didn't seem big enough to worry about. He used to call her during lunch breaks. Now he'd text instead. He used to laugh freely, tell her about his day, his colleagues, his dreams. Now he was quieter, distant. His phone became his new best friend, always in his hand, always face down. She told herself he was stressed. Work had been demanding. He had new clients, late meetings, and deadlines. It made sense, didn't it? But sometimes late at night, she would look at him, really look at him, and realize she didn't know who he was texting anymore. There was a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a distance she couldn't name. It started small, the way he flinched when she reached for his phone, the way he changed the subject when she asked about work, the way his tone shifted, from warmth to impatience, from laughter to silence. One evening, she found herself sitting alone at their dinner table, staring at 2 plates of food slowly getting cold. He'd texted an hour ago, running late, don't wait. She had read those words too many times lately, so she waited anyway, not for him, but for the truth. She felt it coming, like thunder before a storm. When he finally came home, she could smell someone else's perfume faintly mixed with his cologne. It wasn't hers. It wasn't familiar. It was something foreign, a scent that didn't belong in their home. He noticed her staring. "What?" he said. "You're quiet." She smiled softly, forcing calm into her voice. "Nothing. I just missed you. I told you not to wait up," he muttered, walking past her. That night, she lay in bed pretending to sleep as he showered. Her heart beat in sync with the running water. She closed her eyes and told herself, "You're overthinking." But deep down, she knew. The story wasn't adding up anymore. The next few weeks blurred together in quiet confusion. He started leaving earlier, coming home later. He was always on a call, always too tired, always elsewhere. She noticed new shirts she hadn't seen before, a faint trace of lipstick once on his cuff. When she asked, he laughed it off. "You're being dramatic. You know I'd never do that to you." And for a moment, she almost believed him again. Because when he looked into her eyes and said, Trust me, she wanted to. She desperately wanted to. But something inside her, that small, trembling voice of doubt, wouldn't quiet down this time. One afternoon, while doing laundry, she noticed his phone buzzing on the couch. Normally, she would have ignored it. She never snooped, never questioned. But today, her hand moved before her mind could stop it. The message preview flashed for half a second. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." Her stomach dropped. It felt like gravity had betrayed her. She stood frozen, staring at those words, praying it was some misunderstanding. But even denial has limits. When he came home that night, she watched him carefully. Every movement, every word, every lie dressed as normal. She smiled through dinner, pretending everything was fine. She even laughed at his jokes. But behind her eyes, a storm was brewing. The kind that doesn't shout, it plans. That night, as he slept, she sat by the window, the glow of the streetlights falling across her face. Her reflection looked unfamiliar, tired but sharper. She whispered to herself, "If there's one thing I've learned, truth always finds its way out." And that's when she made a decision. She wouldn't confront him, not yet. Not until she had proof. Not until she knew everything. Days turned into weeks, and she became quiet, observant. He didn't notice. He was too busy living a double life, too confident in his lies. But she saw it now. The way he hid his smile when he texted. The way he deleted messages. The way guilt flashed across his face for a fraction of a second. She started keeping track. Dates, times, patterns. She noticed he always worked late on Thursdays. He always dressed better those nights. He always came home just past midnight. She started asking subtle questions. "How was your meeting tonight? Same client? You've been so busy lately, and what's her name again?" Every question made him stutter, even if just for a second, and each hesitation was another thread in the web she was weaving. Carefully, silently. She wasn't the same woman who once believed everything he said. Now, she was the woman who listened between his words. Then came the night everything shifted. He had left his laptop open, something he never did. She told herself she wouldn't look, but temptation has its own heartbeat. Her hand hovered over the trackpad, trembling. One click, that's all it took. Emails, messages, pictures, all the missing pieces fell into place, ugly, undeniable, real. He wasn't just lying about late meetings. He had built an entire second life, one filled with secrets, promises, and someone else. Someone who had what she thought was hers. Her breath caught in her throat. For a long time she just sat there, staring at the screen. The silence around her felt deafening. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Every memory, every word, every "I love you" replayed in her mind like a cruel joke. Her heart wanted to break, but something else inside her refused to let it. She closed the laptop slowly, wiped her tears, and looked around their apartment. The same walls that had witnessed laughter, now echoing with lies. And she whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "He thinks I don't know, but soon he'll understand who I really am." That night marked the end of innocence and the beginning of her quiet war. A war she would fight not with anger, but with patience. Not with rage, but with precision, because sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting the liar believe he's still winning. Betrayal. The truth behind the lie. She once believed truth was something you searched for. Now she realized, sometimes it finds you when you least expect it, and when you're least ready to face it. It had been 2 weeks since she'd seen the emails. 2 weeks of pretending. 2 weeks of silence wrapped in polite smiles. He still kissed her forehead before leaving for work. He still sent her casual texts. "Don't forget to eat." He still said, "I love you," before bed. But every word now felt like a blade dressed in kindness. And every time he spoke, she wondered, is this what betrayal sounds like? Soft? Ordinary? She watched him carefully, not out of love anymore, but study. Every lie has a rhythm, and she was learning his perfectly. The guilt on his face was hidden well, but not well enough. He avoided eye contact when he talked about work. He used too many details in stories that didn't matter. He over-explained things she hadn't even asked about. That's the funny thing about liars. They don't know when to stop talking. One Friday evening, she followed him. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to see it. The truth in motion. He left at 6:45, claiming he had a late presentation. He dressed better than usual. New shirt. The cologne she'd bought for their anniversary. She waited 5 minutes after he drove off, then slipped into her car and followed. Her heart pounded with every turn. Each red light felt like a test, a moment to back out. But she didn't. Because somewhere deep down, she already knew what she was going to find. He wasn't heading to the office. He took a turn toward the city's quiet side, the kind of area filled with rooftop cafes, boutique hotels, and hidden restaurants. He parked, he got out, and then she saw her, the woman from the emails, younger, carefree, laughing as she ran into his arms like she'd been doing it for years. He lifted her effortlessly, spinning her once before kissing her, right there, under the dim glow of the streetlights. The sight hit her harder than any scream could. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her chest ached with something beyond pain, something closer to disbelief, betrayal, and the sudden understanding that the man she loved never really existed. She couldn't look away. Because if she did, maybe she could still pretend it wasn't real. But she didn't. She watched. Every second, every laugh, every stolen moment, she memorized it all. And then she did something unexpected. She didn't cry. She didn't call him. She didn't even drive away. She simply whispered, "Thank you for showing me the truth yourself." That night, she drove home slowly, like a ghost behind the wheel. Every memory of them replayed, their first date, their vacations, their late-night talks. She saw them all through new eyes now. How many of those smiles were lies? How many of those promises were meant for someone else too? The answers didn't matter anymore, because somewhere between the cafe lights and the quiet streets, something inside her broke. And in that breaking, she found her strength. When he came home around midnight, he was humming. He walked in casually, tossed his keys on the counter and said, "Hey, you're still awake?" She looked up from the couch, calm as ever. Couldn't sleep. He smiled faintly. "Rough day." She studied him for a moment. The same man who had kissed another woman just hours ago. "Something like that," she replied softly. He didn't notice the edge in her tone. He poured himself a drink, completely unaware that the ground beneath him was about to crumble. She didn't confront him that night. She didn't have to. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any accusation. But when he fell asleep beside her, she turned to look at him. She studied his peaceful face, the liar who slept like an innocent man. And she whispered under her breath, "You have no idea what's coming." The next morning, she smiled when he left for work. She even packed his lunch, like always. To him, it was a normal day. To her, it was the beginning of something entirely different. She wasn't planning revenge out of hatred. Not anymore. No, this was something colder, smarter, more precise. She had given him her love for 7 years. Now, she would take back something far more valuable, his peace of mind. Over the next few days, she started preparing quietly. She gathered everything: messages, screenshots, call logs, financial records. She found out he had even been using her money for his secret getaways. Each discovery added another layer to her resolve. The pain was still there, yes, but it was evolving, turning into focus. For the first time in years, she wasn't crying over him. She was planning. And though he still smiled and kissed her goodbye each morning, she smiled back, not out of love, but out of the sweetest kind of irony, because he thought he was fooling her. But the real fool was standing right in front of her. That weekend, she found something in their closet, an old photo album. Pictures of trips, birthdays, their first apartment. She flipped through it slowly, her tears finally falling, not from sadness but release. She closed it gently, whispering to the woman she used to be, "You did nothing wrong. You just loved the wrong person." And then she smiled. Not because she was happy, but because she finally knew what came next. By the time Monday arrived, she had everything she needed. Every secret, every lie, every thread of his carefully built facade, and she was ready to pull it, slowly, deliberately, until everything he'd built came crashing down, because betrayal doesn't always end with heartbreak. Sometimes it begins a transformation, and she wasn't his victim anymore. She was his lesson, revenge plan, the art of making him fall apart. She woke up that Monday morning before the alarm. The sun hadn't risen yet, but her mind was already sharp, clear, and focused. The version of her that once cried herself to sleep was gone. In her place stood a woman who finally understood power. Quiet, deliberate, patient power. Because revenge, she realized, isn't about anger. It's about balance, about returning what was taken, not with rage, but with reason. And she had plenty of both. Her first move was simple: invisibility. She stopped arguing, stopped asking, stopped reacting. She became quiet, unshakably calm. To him, it probably felt like peace had returned. He thought the storm had passed. He smiled more, called her my rock again, told her how lucky he was. He had no idea that the silence wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. Because while he thought she'd gone back to being the same trusting woman, she was already dismantling his double life, one secret at a time. She began by changing passwords, discreetly, carefully. Bank accounts, shared investments, online subscriptions. Anything they both had access to. Each change was done so smoothly that he didn't even notice. Next, she reached out to a close friend who worked in finance. With calm precision, she moved her savings, every cent, into a private account under her name only. He had no idea that the safety net he'd been leaning on was about to vanish. It wasn't about money. It was about control. The same control he'd taken from her when he lied, she was now reclaiming quietly. But her real revenge wouldn't come from his bank balance. It would come from truth, the kind that hits harder than any betrayal ever could. She started collecting evidence, emails, texts, screenshots, not for gossip, not for pity, Mao, but for clarity. Every file went into a hidden folder labeled Future. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. Her future, one free from his lies. Weeks passed, and he remained blissfully unaware. He still played the role, the loving partner, the dedicated man. But his performances didn't fool her anymore. Every "I love you" now sounded like an echo from someone else's story. And she wasn't part of it anymore. Her next step was subtle, social. She started reconnecting with old friends, posting more, smiling more, living more. Not for him, but for herself. Her confidence began to return, one genuine laugh at a time. He noticed. "You've been going out more lately," he said one night. "It's good for me," she replied softly. "I'm learning to enjoy life again." He smiled, thinking she meant with him. But she didn't correct him. Some truths didn't need words. They revealed themselves in time. Then came the key moment, the moment she'd been building toward. Their anniversary. For 7 years, she'd been the one planning surprises, romantic dinners, thoughtful gifts. This time she planned something different, something unforgettable. She invited their close friends, his colleagues, even his boss. She told him it was a small dinner to celebrate their love. He was thrilled. He bought new clothes, wore his best smile, and rehearsed his speech about how lucky he was to have her. The night arrived. The restaurant was elegant, warm, softly lit. He walked in proudly, holding her hand. Everyone clapped. It looked like a perfect celebration. Then, after the main course, she stood up. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said. 7 years is a long time, full of love, laughter, and lessons. The room went quiet. He smiled nervously, sensing something beneath her words. She continued, her tone soft but unflinching. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating what we've built. It's about acknowledging what's been broken. And who broke it? The projector screen flickered to life behind her. Pictures appeared. Texts, screenshots, emails, proof. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal, displayed in sharp clarity. Gasps filled the room. He froze, his face draining of color. She turned to him, eyes calm. For years you taught me how to trust a lie. Tonight I'm teaching you what truth feels like. He stood, stammering, trying to speak, to explain. But no words came. The silence was louder than any scream, and then she said the final line, the one that broke him completely. I loved you enough to believe you. Now I love myself enough to leave you. With that, she walked out, slow, graceful, unshaken. The entire room watched her go. He tried to follow, but the whispers had already started. His world, the one built on deceit, began to collapse in real time. Outside, the night air was cold but freeing. She stood under the same stars they once wished upon and smiled, for real this time. Not because she had destroyed him, but because she had finally rebuilt herself. Revenge wasn't about making him suffer. It was about reminding herself she could survive. And she did. A week later, she packed her bags. She left the apartment keys on the counter, along with a simple note. The truth is all yours now. Live with it. She moved to a new city, small, quiet, filled with strangers who didn't know her story. She found a new job, new friends, new laughter, and slowly, the woman who had once been broken by lies became someone stronger, someone untouchable. Every now and then, his messages would appear. Apologies, excuses, empty words. She never replied, because silence, she learned, is the loudest kind of closure. Months passed. One evening, as she watched the sunset from her balcony, her phone buzzed again. A message from him. Just 3 words. I miss you. She smiled softly. For a moment, she remembered everything. The love, the betrayal, the storm. Then she deleted the message and whispered, I don't miss who I was with you. And with that, she turned away from the past for good. Climax. The moment he finally broke. The night after the dinner had ended in silence, he sat alone in the apartment they once shared. The same walls that once echoed with laughter now felt heavy, like they were holding secrets of their own. The phone hadn't stopped buzzing all night. Calls, messages, missed connections. Friends, colleagues, everyone wanted to know the same thing. Is it true? Each notification was another blow to the perfect image he had built for himself. The man who always had everything under control, now couldn't even control a rumor. But these weren't rumors anymore. They were facts. Displayed in front of everyone who mattered. He tried to call her, again and again, but she never answered. Her silence was deafening. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, taking every trace of warmth with her. He told himself he didn't care, that he could fix it, that people forget, that stories fade. But the truth? Stories like his don't fade, they spread, and this one was burning faster than he could breathe. The next day, he went to work, wearing his usual confident smile. But the office felt different. People stopped talking when he walked by. A few offered tight, awkward smiles. Most didn't even look at him. His boss called him in. The conversation was short, formal, painfully polite. We've been made aware of certain personal matters that could affect our company's reputation, his boss said, eyes cold but calm. We think it's best if you take some time off. He tried to argue, to explain that his personal life shouldn't matter, but the decision had already been made. His desk was cleared by noon. That was the first thing she took from him, his image. The perfect man everyone admired. Now they saw him differently, not as a leader, but as a liar. Weeks turned into a blur. The messages from her stopped completely. Her social media was silent. No posts, no photos. It was like she'd disappeared from the world. That silence drove him insane. He needed her to respond, to yell, to hate him, something. But she gave him nothing. He began checking old pictures, rereading texts, trying to find where it all went wrong. But every word he saw, every promise he'd made, felt like evidence against him now. he had been the architect of his own downfall. One evening, he received an email. No subject line, no signature. Just a single sentence. "You broke me quietly. I rebuilt myself louder." It was from her. He stared at it for hours. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even anger. It was something worse. Peace. Because peace meant she had moved on. And that to him was unbearable. Meanwhile, she was thriving. Her new city gave her anonymity, and with it, freedom. She had a small apartment, sunlight through big windows, and mornings that didn't begin with suspicion. She started painting again, something she'd given up years ago. Her laughter came easier now, softer but real. Every time she looked in the mirror, she didn't see a victim anymore. She saw the woman who refused to stay broken, but karma wasn't done with him yet. One by one, the consequences unfolded. The woman he had been lying to, the one from his double life, found out too. How? She saw the same photos at that dinner, thanks to someone who recorded it and shared it online. The internet doesn't forget. His betrayal wasn't just a story anymore. It was a spectacle. His phone became a battlefield. Arguments, breakups, angry messages. His reputation, once spotless, now dragged through every whisper, every post, every screenshot. He tried to spin the story. He claimed she was bitter, vengeful, overreacting. But the evidence spoke louder than he ever could. Late one night, he drove to the place where they'd first met, the small cafe on the corner of Elm Street. He sat at the same table, staring at the same seat she used to take. The memory of her laughter haunted the air. For the first time in years, he didn't know who he was without her reflection to hide behind. That's when it hit him. He hadn't just lost her. He'd lost himself. The version of her that trusted him had died the night she found the truth, and the version of him that she loved had died with it. The next morning, he got another message. This time, from her mutual friend. "She's doing great," it said simply. "You should be happy for her." Happy? He stared at the words until his hands started to tremble. She had moved on. She was living, and he was still stuck in the ruins of the lies he built. For the first time, he realized something he'd never considered before. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the silence that destroys you. A month later, he saw her, purely by accident. At a charity event in another city, she looked radiant, calm, confident, free. He almost didn't recognize her. Their eyes met for a brief second. He opened his mouth to speak, but she just smiled politely. Not with bitterness, not with anger, just calm detachment. Then she turned away, continuing her conversation as if he were just another face in the crowd, and that moment broke him more than any public humiliation ever could, because it meant she didn't hate him anymore. She had simply erased him. That night, he went home and sat in the dark, staring at his reflection. He didn't see the confident, charming man anymore. He saw a stranger, someone who had lied his way into loneliness. He whispered to himself, she was right. Truth does hurt, especially when you finally face it. And somewhere across the city, she slept peacefully for the first time in years. The story was over. Not because she destroyed him, but because she finally stopped letting him matter. Resolution. Freedom after fire. The days that followed felt weightless. For the first time in years, she woke up without tension in her chest. No notifications to dread, no half-truths to decode, no pretending to be okay when she wasn't. The air outside her window felt different too, like the city itself was breathing with her, slow and steady. She made coffee, opened the curtains, and smiled at the sunlight spilling into her apartment. Freedom didn't come in a loud explosion. It came quietly. In the simple act of peace returning to her mornings, she had started journaling again. Each page began with gratitude. Small things. Quiet victories. I'm learning how to love the quiet. I didn't think peace could feel this loud. I finally forgave myself for staying too long. It wasn't forgiveness for him. It was for her. for the parts of herself that once believed love meant endurance. She got a new job at a small art studio that valued creativity more than appearances. She spent her days surrounded by color, brushstrokes, and laughter. Her hands, once trembling with anxiety, now moved with purpose. One afternoon, her coworker said softly, "You always look so calm, like nothing can shake you." She smiled. "That's because I've already been shaken," she replied, "and I survived. It wasn't arrogance. It was truth. The kind earned through fire." Sometimes at night, she would still think of him. Not with longing, not with hate, but with distant curiosity. She wondered if he had changed, if he'd learned anything, if he still thought of her when he scrolled through old pictures. But those thoughts no longer hurt. They were like memories of a different lifetime, faint, harmless, and far away. Because the thing about pain is, once you outgrow it, it can't touch you anymore. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed. Friends who had once seen her broken now saw something radiant in her, a quiet confidence that came from knowing she could rebuild. She wasn't the same woman who once waited for his texts. She was the woman who could walk away without looking back. One friend asked, "If you could go back, would you change anything?" She paused for a long moment, then said, "No, because without the lie, I'd never have found the truth about myself." Months passed, seasons changed, and with each one, she grew lighter. Her home became a sanctuary, soft music, candles, art on the walls, peace in the corners. She learned how to cook just for herself. She took long walks at sunset, bought herself flowers, and laughed without needing a reason. She wasn't waiting for someone to make her happy anymore. She was happy, by choice, by design. One evening, she received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from him. Her hands didn't shake when she opened it. Inside, a short note in his handwriting. "I know I can't undo what I did. I just hope you found peace, because I never did." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not to hold on to it, but to remind herself of how far she'd come. That letter wasn't a wound anymore. It was proof of healing, she whispered to herself. "You were my lesson. I was your consequence." And that was enough. That weekend, she visited her favorite spot, the seaside cliff overlooking the horizon. It was windy, beautiful, alive. She stood there, hair whipping around her face, eyes closed, letting the world wash over her. Every sound, the crashing waves, the distant gulls, the hum of life, felt like music. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just real. She took a deep breath and whispered into the wind, "Thank you for breaking me, because I wouldn't have rebuilt myself otherwise." The wind carried her words away, and for the first time, she truly felt free. From that day forward, she never looked back. Her art began to gain attention. People connected to her raw, emotional pieces. A gallery invited her to showcase her work. Her exhibit's title, Truth After Silence. Visitors stood before her paintings, abstract, powerful, full of light breaking through darkness, and they felt something deep. Some cried, some smiled, and she realized something beautiful. Her pain had become art. Her story had become strength. At the opening night, a journalist asked her, "What inspired this collection?" She smiled thoughtfully and said, "Survival, learning that sometimes the best revenge is peace, and the best closure is creating a life that no longer needs explanation." The room went silent, moved. Cameras clicked, lights flashed, but she wasn't performing anymore. She was simply herself, whole, grounded, unstoppable. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, she stood before her favorite painting, a swirl of blue and gold, representing the storm and the calm that followed. She looked at it and whispered, "You did it. You made it out." Tears welled up, not of sadness but gratitude. Gratitude for every broken piece that had taught her resilience. Because now she knew, revenge didn't end with his downfall. It ended with her freedom. That night, before she went to bed, she wrote one last entry in her journal. I thought revenge would heal me, but peace did. I thought the past would haunt me, but it shaped me. I thought I'd never trust again, but I learned to trust myself, and that changed everything. She closed the book, turned off the light, and fell asleep smiling, not because the story ended perfectly, but because she had finally written her own ending. Moral impact. The truth that sets you free. They say time heals all wounds, but that isn't true. Time doesn't heal, you do. She learned that slowly, one sunrise at a time. Not because she forgot what happened, but because she finally accepted it. Because she stopped asking, "Why me?" and started saying, "Thank you for showing me who I am." The truth is, not every ending is a loss. Sometimes it's the beginning you didn't know you needed. Her story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about awakening, realizing that pain can be a teacher, not a prison. For years, she thought love meant sacrifice. That loyalty meant staying no matter how much it hurt. But now she knew. Love without honesty isn't love at all. It's just dependency wearing a beautiful mask. When she looked back at the woman she used to be, soft-spoken, trusting, always putting others first, she didn't feel pity. She felt pride, because that woman survived. That woman carried the weight of betrayal and still found the courage to stand up, dust off the ashes, and walk forward. Without bitterness, without fear, without hate, that woman became her foundation. And somewhere deep inside, she also forgave him. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because she deserved peace. Forgiveness, she realized, isn't about letting the other person off the hook. It's about cutting the rope that still ties you to their mistake. By forgiving him, she wasn't saying, "It's okay." She was saying, "It's over." She began to understand something profound, that life doesn't punish us for trusting. It teaches us to trust wiser next time. That betrayal doesn't destroy us. It introduces us to the parts of ourselves we didn't know existed. The strong parts, the unbreakable parts, the parts that rise from ruins and say, "Try me again." Every time she looked in the mirror now, she didn't see heartbreak. She saw transformation. The woman who once broke down over lies was now built up by truth, and her truth was simple. I am enough. I always was. I just forgot for a while. The world, she realized, is full of people like her. People who have been lied to, used, abandoned, and silenced. People who thought they'd never heal, but every one of them has the same hidden power, the ability to start again. You don't need revenge to win. You just need to outgrow the person who hurt you. To build a life so honest, so peaceful, that their memory simply doesn't fit anymore. That's the real victory. Sometimes closure doesn't come from the person who broke you. Sometimes it comes when you stop waiting for their apology and start living your life like you never needed one. That's what she did. She learned that peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of understanding. That letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without anger. Because the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's transformation. And transformation doesn't come with noise. It comes quietly, in the way you smile again, trust again, and open your heart again without fear. She often thought back to the night everything changed, the night she found the messages, the night the lies came undone. It used to haunt her. Now, she was grateful for it, because without that moment she would still be living in a beautiful illusion. And now she was living in truth. The truth may hurt, but lies, they kill you slowly, and once you've tasted truth, you never go back. Years later, when people asked her how she got through it, she'd smile and say, "I stopped trying to rewrite the past. I started writing my future." That was her secret. That was her power. Her story in the end wasn't about him. It was about her. About the quiet strength that lives inside every broken heart. The kind of strength that says, "You may have written the first chapter of my pain, but I will write the rest of my story, and it will be beautiful." And maybe, somewhere in the world, he still thinks of her. Maybe he wonders what would have happened if he had told the truth, but that no longer matters. Because some stories don't end with reunion. They end with realization, and the realization was this: She was never meant to stay in his story. She was meant to learn from it, and then outgrow it. Now, when she walks down the street, there's a lightness in her step, not because life is perfect, but because she finally knows she can handle imperfection. She doesn't need revenge anymore. She has peace, and peace is the most powerful ending of all. In the end, it wasn't his lies that changed her life. It was her courage to face the truth. Because sometimes, the most shocking revenge isn't what you do to them, it's who you become after they're gone.